Imagine you have the chance to design a new society. You get to write all the rules, but there's a catch. You are behind a veil of ignorance. You don't know who you will be in the world you create. You could be born rich or poor, healthy or sick, into a loving family or all alone. Now knowing that you could be anyone, what rules would you make? This is the question posed by John Rawls in his 1971 book, A Theory of Justice. And it's one way of answering the question, what is the best way to organize a society? We can come at this question from a lot of different angles. We might say the best society is the one that maximizes overall happiness, or the one that provides the most freedom, or the one that is the most sustainable. But Rawls's thought experiment is meant to bypass our intuitions about what makes a good society and get us to think about what kind of society we would create if we didn't know how we would personally fare in it. If I asked you to design a society right now, without any veil of ignorance, you'd probably come up with something like our current society. Maybe you'd tweak some things here and there, but for the most part, you'd keep the capitalist free market system that we have now, because that's the one you know best. You've lived your whole life under it. So it seems natural to assume that this is the best possible system. But if you were to design a society from scratch, without any knowledge of what your place in it would be, you might come up with something very different. That's because our intuitions about what makes a good society often conflict with what actually makes for a good society for us as individuals. For example, we might think that a society is best if it's meritocratic, meaning that success is a result of ability and effort. But when we imagine a veil of ignorance, a meritocracy doesn't seem so great. That's because you don't know whether or not you'll be naturally talented or hardworking. In fact, you don't know anything about the specific circumstances of your birth, which means that you could just as easily be unlucky as you are talented. So maybe it's better to design a society that doesn't depend on luck. Another example, free markets. We live in a capitalist society, so it's natural to think that a free market economy is the best. But again, if you're behind the veil of ignorance, you don't know whether you'll be born with the ability to take advantage of a free market. You don't know whether you'll be born into an entrepreneurial family that can give you the resources you need to start a business, or whether you'll be born into poverty with no way out. So you might decide that a free market economy isn't the fairest way to organize a society. After all, it depends on whether or not you're born with advantages that you don't deserve. So what kind of society would you design? If you're like most people, you'll end up designing something like a Scandinavian country, a highly egalitarian society with lots of social safety nets and universal health care and free college tuition. According to research, that is what most people would choose if they had to design a society behind the veil of ignorance. In fact, researchers have found that this is true across the political spectrum. When faced with the veil of ignorance, left-leaning people don't want more equality, and right-leaning people don't want less inequality. They both end up designing societies that are more equal than the one we currently have. So why do we naturally gravitate towards egalitarian ideals when imagining a society behind the veil of ignorance? Well, one reason is that we are naturally self-interested. Of course, we want the best for ourselves and our loved ones. But when we imagine a veil of ignorance, we realize that we don't just want the best for ourselves, we also want the best for everyone else. Because we know that we could be anyone, we realize that we need to design a society that is good for all people, not just the people we happen to be. But another reason is that we are naturally empathetic. We might not know what our circumstances would be in a given society, but we can still imagine what it would be like to be in certain circumstances. When we imagine a veil of ignorance, we can put ourselves in the shoes of others and imagine what it would be like to be them. We can imagine what it would be like to be born with their advantages and disadvantages, to have their opportunities and face their obstacles. And in doing so, We realize that we don't want those circumstances to be worse than our own. Empathy is what allows us to see the world from other people as perspectives and understand what it is like for them. It's what allows us to imagine what it would be like to be anyone. And it's what allows us to create societies that work for everyone. Thanks for listening with Zen Bites. Peace in every moment.